Connie Campbell, Conniecampbell.
What was the reason, motivation to apply for the job in Kettering?
The reason why I applied for the position in Kettering was actually brought about by being recruited by Dave Noble, who was the superintendent of Parks and Recreation at the time. That was in 1985, and I was working in Gallipolis, Ohio, at a small art museum. It was called the French Art Colony, and I had attended an Ohio Arts Council annual conference in Cleveland, and Dave was there just checking out the possibility of an art administrator, and we ran into each other, and he really recruited me to apply for the position. He wanted me to. So that was really the main stimulus for me being interested or even hearing about Kettering, because I was in Gallipolis, which is in Appalachia across the state. And then once I came to Kettering to talk to both Joe Homewood, who was director at the time, and Dave about the position, I fell in love with Kettering. Kettering was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was a city that was very progressive. The layout of the city was gorgeous. Keeping in mind, I'm coming from Gallipolis, Ohio, which is also beautiful, but it's in Appalachia, which is hard to get in and out of, and Kettering just seemed so accessible, and there was so much going on here. So I just really fell in love with Kettering and the area, and Joe and Dave. You couldn't help but fall in love with them. They were just terrific people.
Right. So Connie, you started the art program. I mean, they were all there. All that was there was the school. So talk to us about how, you walk into this building, old school building, and you started saying, now what do I do? Can you talk to us about how your first 2 or 3 years and what processes you put in place to get the place up to where, when I came, where it was?
Right. Well, where I was before in Gallipolis, like I said, it's a small art museum, and we had classes, and we had a library, and we had, it was on the historic registry. And the board that I had was a founding member board, and if you work for a private nonprofit organization and you work for a founding member board, and you work in a facility that's on the historic registry, most boards are extremely protective of that building. It was a beautiful old mansion, and when I came to Kettering and applied for the job, found out that there was an unoccupied elementary school building that was 37,000 square feet. And it was an elementary school, huge. And Dave took me through the building, and Dave kept almost apologizing, saying, I know, and this is a word that he used to use a lot. He goes, I know it's not as sexy as where you're coming from, because that's typical Dave Noble. He said, but, it's an empty building here, and we want to do something with it. And I was in awe of it. I said, are you kidding? This is perfect. For an art center, you couldn't have a better building. An elementary school. I said, you could take a piece of clay and throw it against the wall, and the board's not going to come down on me about it. I didn't have to protect the facility as much as I did for that mansion. So anyway, it was a great opportunity, great facility. And at the time, when I started in January of 1985, I think Rosewood Arts Center had been open for 6 months and running as an art center, but there were only like 5 classes going on in it. So there was an arts manager. His name was Phil Burns. He was part-time arts manager working out of the recreation center. and Dave was instrumental in putting Rosewood Arts Center together. Dave Noble, he was the one that did it, that opened Rosewood Arts Center and wanted to start it. So it took about a couple of years for us to really get off the ground and get enough instructors, until we were offering about 20 classes, I would say, every quarter when we would run our quarters, about 20 classes. And it just kept building and building, and we opened up the private art studios, had artists in the building all the time. That was one of the main focuses that I wanted. I wanted artists in the building all the time. I wanted them to think that they were part of that building, that they owned the building. And the more we did that, the more artists came, the more instructors came that wanted to teach, and we were able to slowly but surely really build it up as it was, as it is. And one of the stipulations of that particular building of Rosewood Art Center was it wasn't owned by the city yet. It was still owned by the Kettering School Board, and Kettering Public Schools still owned the facility. So there weren't any major permanent changes that we could make in that building. And I think that went on for almost the entire time that I was superintendent. So everything that we did to the building to adapt it to a cultural arts center, we had to look at it in terms of, okay, if the schools took it over tomorrow, could this room be put back into a classroom as an elementary school classroom? So all of the changes, our hands were pretty well tied behind our back for what we could do in the facility, but I think we did a pretty good job. And in fact, say for the dance studio, we wanted to have a sprung dance floor on the dance studio, a hardwood sprung floor, so that the sprung floor that's in the dance studio is actually sitting on top of the original carpet that is in that classroom, so that if the schools came and said, okay, in 6 months we want the building back, they could just dismantle the floor and everything, and the gallery as well. Everything that was done to the gallery at the time, it could be reversed and turned back into classrooms. So.
Okay, so Connie, thinking back, what are the top 2 or 3 projects you were part of or led during your tenure? And of these accomplishments, what was the most impactful outcome you realized on each of those projects? Thinking back,
okay.
What are the top 2 or 3 projects you were part of or led during your tenure? Of these accomplishments, what was the most impactful outcome you realized on each of those projects?
Okay. The time that I was cultural arts superintendent with the city of Kettering, there were several major programs and major projects that I was involved in that I think were really the most impactful for the city of Kettering and really the most important for the development of the cultural arts. One, of course, is Rosewood Arts Center, which Rosewood was continued to be developed and is still being developed, and actually is the largest cultural arts center in the state. Rosewood has more classes than any other arts center in the state. It's the largest footprint, it's the largest facility for cultural arts programming in the state, for classes, for a community arts center. And it's just blossomed into just such a fantastic facility, a fantastic program, an enhancement for the entire region. If you look at the entire region and you look at what Rosewood Arts Center has to offer, it's just tremendous. Something that the city should be very proud of, and that, of course, I'm very proud of being part of that and that development and our department. Another program within Rosewood Arts Center is Kettering Children's Theater. That is such a wonderful program. It has been ever since the very beginning. When I first came here, Kettering Children's Theater was operated out of a small theater in Indian Riffle Park, where the skateboard park is now. In fact, the the concession facility that's there, that was the exact location where this community theater building was, and Kettering Children's Theater was programming out of there. And there was also Kettering Oakwood Theater, Community Theater, was programming out of there. So we shared that space. But it was a tremendous fire trap. And so when we opened Rosewood Arts Center, the first thing that I wanted to do was take the multi-purpose room for, an elementary school and turn it into a theater. So we did that as much as we could with the limitations that we had, but we turned that, and we moved Kettering Children's Theater programming, which was our program anyway, out of that fire trap building and into Rosewood Arts Center. So Kettering Children's Theater has impacted so many kids over the years to show them what they could do on stage in the arts, take any of their inhibitions away so that they could be opened up, and train them into being a more productive and, I think, community member as an adult. And now it's been there for so long that the kids that were in Kettering Children's Theater, their kids are now in Kettering Children's Theater. So it's a wonderful program. The public art program, the City Sites Public Art Program, is one of the best things I think that our department has done and the city has done to give our community public art in a public space so that they could enjoy it in the parks and enjoy it anywhere in a public space. This facility that we're in right now, which is the Government Center, Kettering Government Center, has a wonderful collection of public art from the community. It's just opened up a lot of avenues, I think, for the community to be able to understand, enjoy, and appreciate art in the public. So I think the City Sites Public Art Program was a tremendous asset for Kettering.
Connie, can you, sorry to interrupt you, but can you talk about who started the conversation? How did it actually come to fruition?
For the public art program?
How did the public art program actually really start?
The public art program really started, the very basic idea, I have to say, started from Jerry Bush, who was Kettering mayor at the time. And I had been involved in public art myself. I'm an artist, a sculptor, and I had completed public art programs and projects with other cities, myself with my own artwork. I was also contracted by the Ohio Arts Council to evaluate public art programs around the state. This is even before I came to Kettering. And I was also chair of the Art in Public Places grant program for the state, for the Ohio Arts Council. So I was very aware of different public art programs around the country and around the state. Jerry Bush approached me, and I believe he probably attended a conference of mayors meeting in a city where they had a pretty good public art program. And he came to me and said he was very interested in public art in Kettering, how could we make this happen? He had seen public art in other cities, and he thought it was something that would enhance the city of Kettering if we started that. So Jerry and I started a conversation, many conversations. So I have to say that Jerry Bush was probably the prominent force in getting the public art program off the ground in Kettering and getting it through its stages of being established and developed. And then, of course, the Public Art Committee, which is something that we had to put together and needed to put together, that included the community to come in and make decisions and look at public art and make decisions on what they wanted in their community as a whole. So it was I'd say Jerry Bush. And Pete Horn also. Pete was extremely He was assistant city manager at the time for development, and he has always been extremely interested in art and in public art. So, also another program that I think during my tenure here that has developed and I'm very excited about and proud of is the Phrase Pavilion. That was developed while I was Cultural Arts Superintendent, and Lincoln Park Civic Commons was developed, and then the Phrase Pavilion was designed, planned, and developed. Pete Horn had a lot to do with that. Jerry Bush had a lot to do with that, and I was alongside them in the development of the whole structure of the Phrase Pavilion for the performing arts and in how it was going to be operated. So that was, I would say, the third really great project that I was able to work on. I was honored to work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like when you came to Kettering, and what are your special memories of your time working in the Kettering Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department?
My special memories of Kettering when I first came here in 1985, of course, was that it was a beautiful city. It was a beautiful city. It was a small city. It was a very manageable city, and it was a meticulously manicured city. Everything looked great in Kettering, and also the attitude with the administration at the time, from City Council, City Manager's Office, and our department, which was Parks Recreation at the time, and then later Cultural Arts, everything was in bloom to promote and enhance art in the community. And my recollection of when I first came here, I just completely fell in love with the position, because anything that I wanted to do or that I felt was very important to do in Kettering to enhance that cultural arts, community cultural arts attitude, community cultural arts enhancement in the city, they said go for it. So it was almost like I had a clean slate and I could develop it from the very beginning, and that's something that most people just dream of. But it was actually just laid in my lap, and the red carpet was laid out, and they just said, go for it. So, you know, you couldn't even dream something as great as that. So that's really what I recall, you know, when I first came to Kettering and started working.
Any special people looking back that really, I know you've talked about Jerry and about Pete, but any other special people when you look back going, wow, I had a great connection with this person. They offered up so much for me. They supported me. Anybody that you can recall?
Well, of course, our department, you know, director from Joe Homewood, Dave Noble. Both of those were individuals were tremendous help and great friends. Pete Horn, and also I had mentioned earlier to City Council earlier this month, I had mentioned Al Jordan, who a lot of people probably don't remember, but Al Jordan was also Assistant City Manager in charge of finance. And as you know, when you start a program, you want a buddy in the finance department who's making those decisions. And he was also had a great impact on being able to develop everything, because he loved the arts as well. His wife was an artist, and he loved the arts as well. So he was another one that really helped. I had a Kettering Arts Council that I adopted that was already established. In fact, our Kettering Arts Council in the city of Kettering was established in the early 60s, which is one of the earliest arts councils in the country. I know that's hard to believe because we think of Kettering as being kind of a small city, but that's the truth. The Kettering Arts Council was an advisory board for developing the arts in Kettering as much as they could. They had gallery shows here at the Government Center, and I think they were instrumental in positioning the schools to allow us to use Rosewood facility as a Rosewood Arts Center. So the Kettering Arts Council at the time was a tremendous impact.
Now, they were separate from the city at the time?
No, they were under Parks and Recreation Department as a citizens committee, as a citizens committee. Pardon me?
So did it report to the director? Because we didn't have a director till 67.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. I just know from the archives that I've gotten and looked at, when the earliest was that this committee was formed, and it was in the early 60s. So I'm not sure. Maybe it was under the city manager's office at the time. I'm really not sure about that.
Well, there was an advisory park board at the time.
Okay.
Vince Schlecki was on that first park board, and I believe Charlie Latham was too, and then John Shearhart was on it, I think, later in the 60s, but it was a volunteer board at first, and then in 67.
And did they run out of the city manager's office?
No, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah. So it was probably the same, I imagine.
I would think it had to be under somebody.
Right. And, you know, Kettering is a progressive city. It's based on progress. That was the slogan for years. And the citizens have always been, Kettering citizens and residents have always been very active in taking part in what was developed in Kettering. So I imagine when the Parks Board was developed, I'm sure that the artists in the community said, hey, wait a minute, you've got a Parks Board, we need an Arts Board.
Yeah.
So that's probably what they did.
Interesting. I'll have to research that.
Yeah.
During your career here, Connie, what were the biggest changes you remember? City infrastructure, demographics, economic, working style, or something else? What were the biggest changes you saw?
Since when I first began working here and over the years that I've been working here, looking at that I was working here, looking at what changes have developed within Kettering itself, including the layout of Kettering and including the programming in Kettering. Number one, I would have to say that I think Kettering has grown a lot. It's not the footprint, but within the footprint, made a lot of developments in the parks. The parks have really developed and expanded to create more participation from the community, to be able to allow the community to participate in the parks more. All of the programming within our department, within Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts, has expanded. The Kettering Recreation Center has turned into a huge facility with a beautiful water park facility, and also the Senior Center facility has developed from Rosie Miller, which was an old, I think it was an elementary school at the time, but it was an old elementary school that was housed the senior programming. That was changed over to the Charlie Latham Center, which is a tremendous facility. And then, of course, the public art programming in Kettering has continued to expand. So I think Kettering's really developed into a Class A community. The reason why the public art program, I think, was developed and embraced by the city of Kettering to continue to be developed and to be established, is because we had a great deal of community members and of administration members who were interested in the arts. Also, across the country, and as I said, the city of Kettering has always prided itself on being based on the slogan that they're a city of progress, city of progress. And so one of the progressions that that I think the city as a whole felt, administration and the community felt, would be a natural transition into that would be a public art program, so that the public spaces in Kettering could have examples of sculpture, examples of public art, so that people could interact with it. I'm not going to say that 100% of the community at the time was real thrilled with that, but that's very typical of all public art programs around the country. So I think basically most of the community was very supportive of it, and the administration was very supportive of it.
Connie, you were the leader of the first piece, Song and Dance. Talk about that one. That was your kickoff. It was good. Obviously, it's in Lincoln Park, but how did that idea start? How did it start? Did you create the Public Art City Sites Committee, and how did you get Song and Dance? How did that come to fruition?
The first public art project that the Public Art Committee decided to produce was Song and Dance, which is in the Lincoln Park Civic Commons area across from the pond. And that was the #1 initial public art project that the Public Art Committee produced. So knowing that it's going to be the first public art project that's going to be introduced into the community, and that the reactions are going to be coming in from all sides of the community about that particular piece, the project, the Public Art Committee decided that they were going to establish a program to call for artists from all over the country. It was going to be a total national call, and we did that. And after we established practicing procedures for a Public Art Committee, we decided that we're going to have a national call. It was going to be completely open to the residents of Kettering to look at what was coming in from the national call, to narrow it down to 3 different artists. Didn't matter where they were from in the country, and to have their proposals and their models on display for the entire community to come and look and vote on which piece they wanted. We wanted it to be completely open to the community. In fact, that is the essence of what public art really is. So in doing that, we wanted to show the community that you have voice in this. You're the one that's going to select this first piece. So we did do that, and we had 3 artists that were narrowed down by the community, and we had the artists come in and give public talks, and the community came, and one of the artists actually was a very, very well-known New York artist. I mean, very well-known. He's in the art history books. And we were very excited that he was interested in coming to Kettering and doing a piece in Kettering. The artist that was finally selected, which I'm thrilled with, that was selected, was Barry Gunderson, who is actually located in Columbus, and taught sculpture at Ohio State University, and has been involved with many public art projects in the state of Ohio. So his proposal was adapted and accepted by the community. They heard his public art presentation and asked him questions, and that's who they selected. So that's how we got Song and Dance. And the reason why he designed Song and Dance was because the Phrase Pavilion had just opened. We had just inaugurated the Phrase with a concert, and we were just starting maybe it was the 2nd season of the Phrase. So he was so impressed with the Phrase being there, and the site location of his selection was in Lincoln Park at that site, and his design was his aluminum sculpture. It's aluminum, and his sculpture was titled "Song and Dance," and the figures that you see on that are just a reaction of his interpretation of song and dance at the phrase.
Wow. Talk to us about your favorite public art project.
All of the public art projects are my favorite. But if you ask me what would be my most favorite, okay, if you say what's your most favorite, one that I think made the biggest impact in Kettering, and really, really involved the community in education and in the process in bringing the world to Kettering, which is something that we wanted to do. We wanted to expose Kettering to the world, and we wanted Kettering, the artists, to come and be exposed to Kettering. So that would be the stone exposition that we did. And that was produced at Delco Park, and it was 21 days. It seems like incredible now that could have been done in 21 days. But in 21 days, we brought in artists that were stone carvers from all over the world, and even from Bulgaria, which actually was considered a third world economy and a third world at the time. So we even brought in an artist from Bulgaria, and within 21 days, they created a stone carving exposition, world stone carving exposition, and I want to say the first one in the United States. There was never one in the United States, and until this, and it was called Kettering Rocks. And one of the artists on the Public Art Committee, John Hudson, was instrumental in that. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have pulled it off. I didn't know really the involvement in it. But John Hudson, who's out of Yellow Springs, was on the Public Art Committee, and he was involved in these worldwide stone expositions all over the world for many, many years. So he knew the ins and outs and all of it and how to develop it. So I have to say, during that time, we brought in all of the schools to tour the stone carving exposition and talk to the artists, and the artists were very communicative. Some of them couldn't speak English, but they did as well as they could, and the community could always approach them and talk to them about what they were doing. So I think that was so receptive. And at the end of, we also brought in the university students that came in. We had a lot of volunteers that gave tours through it. And then at the very end, we were able to get there were 8 artists, so we were able to get 8 sculptures, stone sculptures installed throughout Kettering in the parks, and people to this day come and look at those sculptures and remember that stone exposition. And we had people from all over coming in to see that. So I have to say that was probably one of the most important and impactful events that we have done as a public art committee.
Oh, absolutely, and fun.
Mm-hmm. It was fun.
Started, I think.
All of them are my favorite of the stone carving expositions, but I think one that is more recognized in the city of Kettering by the community and used and visited more often than any of them is the artist John Van Alstyne from upstate New York produced a monument to 9/11. And 9/11 happened the year prior. So
This was in September, because stone symposium was.
Right, the stone carving exposition was in September, and 9/11 had just happened the previous year. And of course, John Van Alstyne is a New Yorker. He's from upstate New York, and so he felt, and not only that, but Kettering was very involved in the rescue and the rebuilding after 9/11, because our fire department did go in and give assistance and help to the fire departments in New York, as everyone did across the country, as much as they could. But they had a very impactful, I think, assistance to the New York after 9/11 by going there and assisting. So we were not uninvolved in 9/11. Everybody was impacted. Everybody. So the monument that John built, carved and constructed and put on the plaza, the 9/11 plaza in Kettering, actually has a style on it, on the face of the stone, that is programmed, GPS programmed, so that high noon on 9/11, it'll be marked that it lines up. And so it changes, of course, GPS, it changes every year, but we have plaques that tell you exactly what time that mark is going to be lined up, and that indicates what happened in New York on 9/11 at the time. So and people do visit it as a memorial and bring flowers to it, and I think that's really one of the most impactful pieces from that exposition.
I think, anything else you think is important to discuss that you haven't already talked about?
Thinking over the years of development of the cultural arts and Rosewood Art Center, I think one of the most important aspects of all of it, of all the development, has to be in the staff. The staff that we had in our department, that our support staff, our everyday staff, everyone who worked together so well, and their knowledge of the arts and of culture that was brought into Rosewood Art Center, and their input in all of the programming that we developed. One person can't just come in and just lay it all out and do it. It has to be a community effort, and it also has to be a staff community effort. And I have to say that we've been very fortunate in our department for the professionalism and the professional staff that we've had, and particularly in the cultural arts, I have to say, because that's what I know best, that we couldn't have done it without the tremendous staff that we have right now. And I also have to say that when I retired, of course, when anyone leaves a position and they are so embedded in that position, and that is their life, or they think it's their life, and they want it to keep going on, you have to consider who's going to take it over and who's going to do it. Not only who's going to do it, but who's going to do it better. I mean, that's the thing that you have to think of. Who's going to be better than I was, or that, who's going to take it beyond the point where it is now, where I'm leaving. And Shana McConville was a staff person of mine years before I left, and she was in charge of programming, for adult programming, and she had tremendous contemporary concepts for arts, and she developed, she was a great grant writer. She wrote grants for particular programs that she set up, and I knew, and she was at the time, she was in Philadelphia, and in charge of the art gallery at the university, and she was the one that I knew could take what we had at the time and make it bigger, make it better, make it different. And voila, Shayna took it on, and she's doing such a great job, and she is making it better. And it's the fact that now Rosewood is changing. It's being developed into a bigger, better art center and renovated, and it's just an exciting thing that I have to say Shayna has focused on.
Yeah, great.
Right.
What would be one or two pieces of advice you would say to our full-time, part-time, regular part-time staff about their profession and things they should focus on?
For any of the current staff for our department, for Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department, I would give, if they ask me what kind of advice would I give them, I would have to say, number one, be focused on your position, on what you do. Number two, listen to the community. We work for the community. We're a civic servant to the community. So what we develop for the community. We don't develop it within our own minds. We develop it to enhance the community and for what the community needs at the time. So know the community, know what your position is, follow up with other staff members, and also keep in mind that everyone started from the bottom. Most everyone started from the bottom at some time, maybe not here in Kettering, but at some time. And that development is important to remember, that wherever you think that you're going to be in 10 years from now and 20 years from now depends on what you do now and how you do it now. So just focus on that every day and get through the hurdles. There's going to be hurdles. There's going to be a lot of hurdles. But you have to get through those, because you have to focus on what your position is, what you're doing, how to enhance it, how to enhance the community, and where it's going to be in 10 years from now.
You've got the Parks, Rec, Cultural Arts Department. How does that fit within the whole framework of the entire city?
Looking at the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department and how our department, our individual department, fits within the entire city, entire city administration, I think number one, I think it's a tremendous impact in the entire administration, because all of the city departments work together. The engineering department works with the planning department, and of course the finance department is highly involved in everything that you do. The city manager's office, all of the departments focus and work together to create this great city, to create Kettering for the residents and for the community. Our Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department is a key factor in that, within the administration. I think it has one of the biggest visual focuses within the residents and within the community, because we're out there, we're in the community. We work for the public community. We have the parks, we have the community arts center, we have the community recreation center, we have the water park. We have all of the projects and all of the programming that we do within Kettering. So we are the biggest focal impact, I think, within the entire city, yet we would not be able to be as impactful or work within the city if it wasn't for the rest of the city departments and city council in supporting what we do and in supporting each other. So I think that's, if you look at the whole snow globe, we're in there, and we're the ones that you're shaking up and that everything is falling around. That's my opinion.